built the housing and then built elevated walkways throughout the City of London. This was get everybody in a car, but also get everybody away from the car because of the pollution generated by the car. So this is why we have to come up to this level to be at the, technically the ground level for the Barbican estate. Anyway, we decided to discourage cars from coming in, so this place is famous for having loads and loads of empty
doors opening.
sectors.
Floor 1.
So this brings us to an interesting point. Everything you see here is courtesy of Adolf Hitler. And this is a Roman city. It was founded by the Romans in 47 AD. By 199 AD, they had built a wall that had gone around the city, enclosing it into a citadel. Maximum population of the City of London in Roman times was 30,000 people. Maximum population of the same area during the Elizabethan era, 250,000 people. And the difference is, when the Romans built it, they kept an insignificant amount of farmland inside the wall. Because if you're going to be under siege, you've still got farmland, you still can feed everybody and do all the things you need to be able to do and run independently. But the reality is, we have never, so far in this tour, we have not been in the City of Londinium as defined by that wall, which remained in place up until the 1770s. So in the 1770s, they decided, screw this, this wall is now a hindrance to us because a cannon can obliterate the wall. It has no defensive purpose whatsoever. So they demolish all the gates coming in and out through the wall, and they demolish all the freestanding wall. However, over the millenniums, they have been building buildings up against the wall. So those houses and those warehouses and buildings have Roman wall incorporated in them. So, on the 29th of December 1940, when the Luftwaffe flew in and decimated everything here, and there was no rebuilding in this area until the 70s, that gave plenty of time for archaeologists to go around going, oh hello, yes, you see that there? And that's the original Roman wall. That's Hadrian's Fort right there. So we are about to enter Hadrian's Fort. Hadrian's Fort is the shape of the iPad. We are coming right through the gate in the middle, and I do have a picture of this. And you can see the gate now. There's the tower. And you will see a wall lining up, and that is Hadrian's Wall coming through. So we're now entering the northwestern end of the City of Londinium as defined by Hadrian's Fort. So what do I mean by Hadrian's Fort? If I show you this picture here, this is an artist's interpretation of Londinium. Let me zoom in. That's the fort in the northwest corner, and we have just gone through those doors, those gates there. Yeah. Now we're going to walk this way. I want to walk and talk. But the corner of the fort is just beyond those trees there, and then it starts heading in this direction. We're going to meet the wall again. But here's the deal. The Romans left in 410. I just want to give you, because you mentioned, we talked about the bricks. Romans were the only people who could ship in the stone. So the stonework that was used to build that wall all the way around was built by a guy called Septimius Severus, and he imported every last bit of stone from Kent, which is miles away. But you can go down the River Thames to the River Estuary, or the Thames Estuary, and then go into the River Medway, and then there's quarries in Kent, and they have what's known as Kentish ragstone. They were able to quarry that and bring it up here by boat entirely, and then build everything out of it. It's 3 meters thick, 3.2 kilometers wide, and it took about, they estimate, 1,500 boat journeys to bring that stone in. Only the Romans could do that. The reason Septimius Severus did this is because he had just had a battle with a usurper called Albinus, who was British and based in London. And they had their titanic battle in France, in Lyon, and he lost the battle, Albinus, the British guy, and Septimius Severus came back and built this wall. Now, there is a debate as to what was he doing, showing off by building a 3-meter thick wall. Hadrian's wall, which you've just been passing through, was only maybe 1.5 meters thick. Probably the reason he's doing it is because he's possibly, maybe, enslaving everyone in London to build the wall, to say this is what happens to you if you go against the Roman Empire or my rule. Septimius Severus wasn't finished with London. Hadrian is famous for building a wall between Scotland and northern England. And Septimius Severus went up to that wall and was the first emperor to go beyond the wall and try and take Scotland as well. He failed to do that, dying in York. And he spent the rest of his life trying to fight the Scottish and failing to do so because they're savages. Right. Oh, by the way, I just want to be absolutely clear. They never even bothered with the Irish because they were even more savage. I use it as a term of affection.
Right.
Scottish. Edit that bit out, probably. So this building is being demolished and probably going to be rebuilt and redesigned and that. It is part of a program that is constantly happening in the City of London. The thing that's different about the City of London is it's sequential. Every building is built with 30 years demolition down the line. So I know this building was getting ready for this because that building was completed in 2018. Its neighbour across the street is just about finishing now. And once that's finished, then this will be the next project to be jazzed up. So if you don't have a pension, now you know where your pension money is being stored, into the land and property in the City of London. Now we have 3 sites to finish this building. And we have more Roman wall. So you were looking along the wall, heading off in that direction. It turns and now it crosses here. This is the location of Cripplegate. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what kind of people were hanging around Cripplegate and what they were trying to achieve. This is where all the beggars were. This was the poorest part of the city. And they're coming in and out and they're going, hello, no, give me some money. Fund the poor little cripple. But the reason I'm emphasizing this used to be St. Alphonsus Church in the 1800s. They demolished it, but they retained that wall. That wall is a Roman foundation, Anglo-Saxon wall on top, Norman wall. Anglo-Saxon are South Denmark, North Germany. Came over after the Celts and the Romans. And the Anglo-Saxons would have been fighting the Romans near the end. They became the kings of Britain until the Normans come in 1066. The Normans add their elevation to the wall because weapons are getting better. And then, at the very top, which you'll see in a moment after the page, Tudor. So that's why they retained it, because it has all the different archaeological periods in the wall. So, if you go to Buckingham Palace, and then to the side, you'll see St. James's Palace beside Buckingham Palace, and it's a red castle palace, and it's the same design as you see on the top of that. However, we've got St. Alphonsus Church there, and then this is Elsing Spital. So this used to be a church. It's 1,000 years old. Elsing, William Elsing buys it in 1320. Converts it into a church, into a hospital, hence the term spital. And what is this hospital for? Poor people with disabilities, whether they be blind, crippled, etc., etc. So, good news. You came here to get aid from the Augustinian monks, and you went over there to earn your money over at Cripplegate. And that was your commute and your life, and that was how you did things. So, Elsing went to heaven because of what he did when he died 20 years after setting up the hospital. But Henry VIII shut down the hospital, and he'd invested heavily in St. Bartholomew's Hospital, which is further up in the city of London. So they were all moved out over to there. This then returned to being a church, and then it was bombed by the Germans in the First World War. So if you remember earlier I referenced the First World War, they had the big biplanes that were coming in terrorizing London. This was one of the buildings that they hit. The back end went right away, and you've got the wall there, was taken out by the fire, was taken out by the bomb. And this actually survived intact. All they had to do was put a new wall there, and then you had a new little chapel. So in the interwar years, from the First World War to the Second World War, that was a functioning chapel. And then on the 29th of December 1940, big fire engulfs it all, and it is left as you see it today. So this has survived 2 world wars being attacked in both. The unfortunate thing for the royal family is that the name of the bomber that bombed this in the First World War was the Goethe bomber. And the reason why that's important is the family name. It's a family name, Goethe. When Queen Victoria married Albert, cousins, first cousin. The family are the Hanoverians. From George I onwards, they're all German. And then she marries Albert, who is German again. His surname is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, that meaning that is the official name of the royal family, sharing the name of the bomber that bombed this church. Is it any wonder that they changed their name to Windsor during the First World War? Come this way. My finger on what it is. No, you probably shouldn't do that either. Yes, something on. Some people you can't take. And then this is what it looks like now. And that is Westminster University, Fulton, Missouri, in the United States of America. So what happened? Okay, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister on the 10th of May 1940. He is in a government of national unity where they have just come together, all the politicians, to fight the war, socialists and conservatives. He's a conservative. He's going to run the war, while his socialist counterpart, Clement Attlee, is going to run the nation. So he's going to ensure housing and hospitals and all the things that people need during the war. Rationing, keeping everybody fed, that kind of thing. So when it comes to the general election of 1945, Winston Churchill is negotiating with Stalin and Harry Truman in the Potsdam Conference as to what's going to happen to Europe. And he says, hello, right chaps, I just have to go off and win the election. So he goes off and loses the election as the guy who won the war. Now that may be a bit of a surprise to people. Winston Churchill was not a popular politician. Clement Attlee knew this, and Clement Attlee made it a policy that he was to be Prime Minister. He would not go into coalition unless it was Winston Churchill. But the main reason Winston Churchill was chosen is he called it correctly on the run-up to World War II, that Adolf Hitler was a problem and you are going to war with this guy, and everybody else was doing appeasement. Labour were against appeasement, and that's why he was against appeasement, so that's why he's Prime Minister. But he was not a popular politician. So Clement Attlee came in and said, I'm going to nationalise all industries and you're all going to get jobs. And everyone went, that's fantastic. I am going to build housing for every single one of you. And everybody went, that's fantastic. And you're all getting free healthcare. Winston Churchill said, I'm rather busy negotiating with Harry Truman and with Stalin, but I'll do whatever he says. And that essentially was the election. Everybody sort of trusted Clement Attlee to deliver and did not trust him to deliver. So on a comprehensive landslide victory for Clement Attlee. This man is regarded as the greatest Prime Minister this country has ever had because he won the war. But in 1945, the nation thought otherwise. So talk about rewriting history a little bit. Anyway, the point is, he's out. So in 1946, Harry Truman, sitting there beside him, invites him to Fulton, Missouri, Westminster University, his hometown. Well, Harry Truman, I believe he's called him Missouri, but he was the senator for Missouri. So where he comes from, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, this is where they have a little speech. So Winston Churchill gets his honorary degree and delivers a speech. And in this speech he says, "An iron curtain will descend across Europe," the famous Iron Curtain speech. First time it's ever been used in the context of the USSR, and as a result it sticks as a concept. If you were living in Bulgaria, you'd be behind the Iron Curtain, whereas everybody else was living the other side of it, fighting silently in the Cold War. So here's the deal. In 1965, Winston Churchill passes away at the age of 90. A man who was permanently drunk, who smoked cigars his entire adult life, who was on amphetamines to deal with depression, and believed that exercise was fundamentally bad for your health. So I think a valuable lesson for everyone here. But the point is, after his death, the university turns up in London and goes, "Hey man, we want to build a museum to Winston Churchill. What do you got?" Everything's for sale. London Bridge is sent out to Lake Havasu in Arizona. So somebody looked out the window and said, "Well, I suppose you can have that." So they sold this to them, shipped it out, re-erected it as a church. It is a fully functional church, but in the basement is a museum to Winston Churchill. And there is a lovely statue of Winston Churchill outside the front. 1989, the Berlin Wall comes down. 1991, the USSR collapses. 1992, the university turn up in Berlin and go, "Hey man, we want to buy the wall." So they buy the wall, the Berlin Wall, slap it outside the front. So what we have here is the Cold War represented by the beginning of it with the Iron Curtain speech by Winston Churchill, and the end of it with the actual Iron Curtain outside the front. All because Winston Churchill said a few words. All of that has been created. Now, our last stop is in the City of London, and that building you're looking at in front of you dates back to 1440, so it's pretty old. However, everywhere we've gone, I've shown you destruction of modern buildings or the bomb sites, but this building, St. Lawrence Jewry and the Guildhall, are completely gutted by fire and do not get restored until 1957. So it's a long time before they get back up and running. However, the reason I want to finish the tour here is because it's a nice place to be. There's toilets just over there as well, so you can I don't know what they do. Oh, maybe it's a private event, but I think you can get into the gallery there. Well, have a look anyway. But here, what I want to show you is this. I want to finish up on this point here. With all the destruction of buildings and etc., you do not win the war until you break the spirit of the people. In 1939, before the war happens in London, this being the phony war period, this poster is produced by the government telling you to keep calm and carry on. Now, I don't know how you feel about being told to calm down, but if it's coming from the government, it's worse. So the reality is this was not a popular poster. So it was taken out of circulation, never to be seen again. But in the year 2000, a hipster found one. Yes, the internet had just been invented, and it was scanned straight in, and we've been laughing at this concept ever since. But let me give you what this means. This is a milkman delivering milk, keeping calm and carrying on. Now, I do need to tell a little bit of the background story to this photograph. You see the firefighters in the background? Yeah, so this is all live, and there's a milkman crossing this rubble to deliver milk. You need milk in the morning for tea. Yep. When the photographer and his assistant saw the milkman, they reached into their pockets for their iPhones to take a photograph, only to discover they wouldn't be invented for another 17 years. So what they had to do was go up to the milkman and say, "Can you hold on while we set up a camera to take a photo of you in this position?" And the milkman says, "No, I don't want a photograph taken of me," and walks away. With the result that the assistant chases down the milkman and says, "No, don't worry about it. You don't have to be in the photo. Can I just borrow your jacket and your milk?" And what you were looking at is the photographer's assistant standing in for the milkman. So everything's fake is what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah, fake news. Anyway, this is more common to see. Business as usual, written on a blackboard outside of a bombed building. If you are a shop, you must stay open. Everybody needs what you have. If your house gets blown up, sucks to be you. But if the shop gets blown up, the entire community suffers. So they didn't close. They just put signs up saying business as usual, patched the building together and carried on business. John Lewis Department Store on Oxford Street was completely bombed, with about a quarter of the building left standing, but everything was gutted. And as a result, this was October 1940, the staff came in the next day and they put trestle tables all down Oxford Street and sold stock in the open air for 2 weeks until they found a new location in which to trade. They stayed in that new location until the 1960s when they rebuilt their store where it currently is today. That's keeping calm and carrying on. But finally, last photo, then it's all over. It's a wedding photo. Yeah, that's their house. What they've done is they've come back to the house. Daddy has his medals on. No German bomb is going to stop me from giving away my daughter. Daughter's ready for the wedding. They're going to walk to the church. Wedding done. Everybody's having a laugh. The whole thing is absurd, but what a nice photograph to remember the circumstances at the time when she got married. The point I want to make here is this. It is because of these people that this country never gave up. And on that note, I want to say thank you very much for coming to the trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice.